I tried to resist it, but my brain started going, asking questions, and finally I had to try, and I got on. And eventually that got me to Mr. Blue. And
Stearns and trimethadine.
when I read what he had been doing, I mean, I didn't think it was possible to synthesize inhibitors that are that complex, but he's doing it by the bucket load.
His work is unbelievably brilliant. I mean, he is way out in front. He had some kind of an ethics cloud around him, but it didn't stop him.
I need to go and see him.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 120 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always joined by my lovely colleagues Chris and Dave. How are you both doing?
Feeling lovely, thank you. Or should I say, incredible?
I didn't even think of that.
I set them up, you knock them down.
I was first in the queue with the
Dave,
comedy
you green with
last week.
envy.
It's not easy being green, you know.
Just don't make us angry. You won't like us when we're hungry.
So basically we're doing the Muppets today, yeah? Okay, got it.
We are. We're yeah. Maxie, I get to do Miss Piggy. Oh, sorry, that was a bit erotic, Becca. Calm it down.
Oh dear.
We're feeling incredible, are we? Why might that be?
We're doing Pixar, that's probably why.
The Incredibles. Currently no Pixar on our future slate. We will talk about that at some point.
I personally would love to do it.
But without revealing any of it now, we've just firmed up our slate for probably the next 2 years.
The series that I really want to do are moving further and further down the slate. So
no, it isn't, because you're the
well,
series
Hitchcock is
really
in there somewhere.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, the one I really want to do.
That's just given one away. Hitchcock is one of them.
But there's other two I'd like to do, and they're going down and down. But anyway.
All right.
Well, what are the other two? What was Pixar and...
Ghibli.
Oh, Ghibli. Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
I normally just throw the Ghiblis away and just have like a breast or a wig.
And everyone seems to have different opinions. Do you cook them or what? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well,
I mean, the neck bit's
you know,
all right,
so
but those other
you know.
bits, pointless.
Those giblets, you don't want to eat them.
Don't know where we'd get.
Stick them on the barbecue. It is summer.
Don't know where we'd get a series out of that, Becca. We'll work out some Studio Ghibli and we'll work out some Pixar as well.
Come up with some new recipes for what you can do with giblets.
Okay, brilliant.
If you come up with some ideas of what we can do with giblets, drop us an email, expecttotalk@gmail.com.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh dear, including where not to shove them. Anyway, tonight we are reviewing The Incredible Hulk, starring Ed Norton, not Edward Snowden, Liv Tyler, William Hurt, Tim Roth, Tim Blake Nelson, Ty Burrell, who I didn't totally forgot he was in this film, and Lou Ferrigno. Score by Craig Armstrong, script by Zach Penn, and directed by Louis Leterrier, and released in 2008.
I was really trying to remember what I best know him from, Ty Burrell, and I'm looking through his
Modern Family.
Never watched Modern Family, so it's not that.
So
I think he's just one of those people who just keeps turning up and stuff. Like,
no, he's like a good character actor.
Like he keeps playing like bit parts and different things, so like you would have like just known him out of association, I imagine.
He's in Finding Dory as well.
I did watch Back to You, which was a short-lived Kelsey Grammer sitcom he did after Frasier.
Yeah. Yes.
He was in that, and actually that was just before this, so maybe that was it. He turned up and it was like, oh, I know from that sitcom that's not that good. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Ty Burrell's in this, starring Edward Norton.
Not Edward Snowden.
Yeah. Second attempt to get Hulk on the big screen. Did everybody see the first?
Yes.
In 2003.
I didn't see it at the cinema. I watched it on DVD like a year or so afterwards, and after it got absolutely trashed, I remember watching it thinking, this isn't bad. I'm quite enjoying this. I don't see what everyone's problem is. Then it got to the last act. I was like, yeah, you kind of lost me now.
All right, I get it. Yeah.
but for the most part, I did generally think I think I'd still kind of do. I think it's a little bit underrated. No, maybe not underrated. It's a little bit over over generous. But I don't think it it's a better movie than people give it credit for. I think it just loses its way. But
like visually it's stunning, but then in terms of like plot and thematics, it does kind of get a bit like, as we were discussing off air before we started recording, like a bit pretentious.
Yeah,
I mean, I do love Ang Lee's films, and they're very beautiful, but I just think it kind of gets ahead of itself.
I do think the Hulk actually takes the idea of the character and does something with that, but whereas that was probably a bit more like a proper director's, a little bit more artistic in a way it's conceived. This one's like total polar opposite. It's a bit more mass audience friendly, but there's very little subtext to it at all.
Yeah, there isn't. I mean, it's funny because I like Eric Bana quite a bit. I didn't really like him in that film, largely because I thought when he was trying to like contain his rage before he turned, it looked ridiculous. He looked like that Harry Enfield character. What were they called? The Self-Righteous Brothers?
Oh, yeah.
No.
He'd be going... and it looked a bit silly. Having said that, I have and probably always will have a bit of a thing for Jennifer Connelly. And she's lovely in it. They put her in this sort of chunky knitwear that looks kind of cute. You want to sit in front of a fire with her. And I really,
Bettany's
really
a lucky man.
I know. And I really liked...
Man.
And I liked and maybe even preferred Sam Shepard as Thunderbolt Ross. But that's a bit of a photo finish because William Hurt's pretty good as well. I liked it. I mean, one of the things... I've certainly got a non-standard opinion on the CG, in that traditionally most people, when the one we're going to review tonight came out, were saying, well, it looks so much better than that Ang Lee joke. I actually think the Ang Lee Hulk is better rendered, not necessarily better designed. The only big flaw in the rendering is the shorts. The shorts look really cartoonish, but the actual... I believe that creature is there, whereas a lot of the CG we're going to talk about tonight I think looks awful. I think it looks really cartoonish. There's more detail in this Hulk, but it doesn't look finished. It doesn't look properly rendered, and the character only really works at night. The sort of thunderstorm scene, he looks pretty good, but anything in daylight I think he looks bloody awful, actually. But yeah, so I kind of liked it. The interesting thing with the Hulk film is, from 2003, the Ang Lee one, was a lot of people said, oh, well, it's not very child-friendly, is it? Funny thing is, I went with a friend, his wife, and their then 5-year-old kid, and the 5-year-old was completely transfixed by it, which was quite interesting. Really got on well with the Ang Lee Hulk. If I've got one critique...
It's all the domestic violence stuff in it, that's probably what it was.
Yeah, reminds me of home. Just slaughtered my friends. No, none of that in that house. Lovely people. But they took this kid who I thought was going to struggle with it, because I was struggling with it a bit, and I looked round, he transfixed, and loved it. If I had one flaw with it, one major flaw was the relatability of the character in making... Now, remember, we're not comic book people, and I don't care what the comic does in this regard. I didn't like the fact that he got larger the angrier he got. Because by the sort of big scene where he breaks out into the Nevada desert or whatever, I think he goes up to something like 15 to 20 feet in height, and he's so separated from the size of human beings that it suddenly just doesn't become relatable in any way. I do like them to cap his height at like 8 or 9 feet. So I think what we're going to cover tonight is a little bit more relatable. But yeah, it's got none of the ambition. And funnily enough, for this being a much more crowd-friendly film, the gross is barely any different. I mean, the Ang Lee Hulk film grossed 245, and this grossed 263. 18 million difference with 5 years of inflation in between, and there's 13 million different in budget as well. So if anything, and it will depend on individual deals done in different markets, but on the face of it, this film is actually even less profitable than the Ang Lee film, which is quite interesting. The only other thing I want to sort of say in background before we go into first thought is Louis Leterrier signed on to direct it, which got me a little bit worried, because I just thought, he was best known for The Transporter, and I just thought, this is going to be real fucking dumb shit. But I warmed to him through all the special features. I really did quite a bit. Directed it with a broken leg, I think, for a lot of the shoot. It was a tough shoot. But his first choice to play Bruce Banner was Mark Ruffalo. And it was the studio who said no and wanted Norton. And by the studio, I mean Universal in this case, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we could have had Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk right away.
Yeah.
Which would have been interesting.
I think that's interesting how it's all come back around, really, hasn't it? So.
See, if that would have happened, we probably would have seen a different actor rather than Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, we might not see him now, like we do in the Avengers.
I don't know. I think the only thing I think is, let's say he'd continued and been in the Avengers as the take on the character we know and everything, because I do think the take on the character is a little different here. The only question it raises in my mind was, would they have redesigned the Hulk in the same way? Because there's a big redesign becoming between this film and the version we see in the Avengers, partly because there's a different man playing Banner, partly because there's a different studio effects house, doing the effects. That I'm not so sure about. Might we have had a less satisfying looking Hulk because they would have had to continue with whatever Rhythm and Hughes did, albeit render it a bit better. So that's kind of an interesting point to me. Couple of other things to mention. Music done by a guy called Craig Armstrong. Well, I'm just looking up now because I really don't know his stuff. But actually looking at it, he scored Elizabeth the Golden Age. He did the Oliver Stone film World Trade Center, and he did Love Actually. How much non sort of source music there was in that, I don't know. Just what struck me is how similar to the Danny Elfman score for Hulk it is. It's not as good as, but it's that was quite interesting. I thought
some of the music reminded me of Dine of the Day, just a little bit like the first couple of opening bars to like Madonna's theme, and it sounds kind of quite choppy, quite very urgency aspect of the theme as well. But I just only thought, as I was listening to it, I thought, hold on a minute, I've heard this somewhere before.
The theme that sticks out in my head is the stuff with Betty Ross, like the kind of like the romantic type stuff. That was the one. That's the music that was standing out to me the most.
And a very early fun fact as well, we also hear the Lonely Man theme from the original series.
Yeah,
we do, and I think that was going to sort of lead me on to the sort of last thing I wanted to say as sort of background on this film is it does feel like an updating of the television series, much more than what's come since.
Is that good or bad?
I love the television series. Whether it's evidently it's not that good for general audiences because it didn't gross very high, but the TV series started off with a TV film. I was correct in saying TV. I'm correct in saying TV film, although I think it got a cinema release in this country. Starred the late Bill Bixby, who does have a tiny little cameo in this film as a character. Edward Norton is watching one of Bill Bixby's TV programs at one point in this film, so you do see him on the television screen. Yep. But the Lonely Man theme and everything else, quite an iconic piece of music. In that TV series, just to give you a little bit of background, he is a sort of researcher working on. He's actually researching based off something that happened to him, because he has a car accident before the events of the film. The car flips, catches fire. He gets out and he's trying desperately to turn the car over, open the door, do something, and he can't do it, and his wife perishes in the car. And in the years that follow, he's doing all this research on it and looking at, and he's hearing stories from people who suddenly were able to tap into great strength in almost identical stories. He's interviewing a woman at one point who's clearly got like a burn on her face, where she's got her son out of the car in almost identical scenarios. And what he finds is they all tapped into this strength at times of high gamma, whatever that means, whether that means environmentally or whatever. So he blasts himself with some gamma, and it kind of thinks nothing has happened, drives home, a tyre blows out, and in his anger he transforms into Lou Ferrigno's version of the Hulk that we know. And in the series that followed, he basically, it was a bit like the Littlest Hobo or something. He went from town to town doing jobs that were below his level of education and off the books, and calling himself something different So he was known as David Banner for reasons we've discussed before, but he'd go somewhere and call himself David Banman or David Banyan or something rather too close to his real name, to be honest.
That's why we see David B at the end.
But he would try to just like fit in somewhere and work for just, janitor, that sort of thing. And eventually something would be going on in that town that he would try to get involved with and eventually Hulk out, typically twice an episode. But it's a man going from town to town, working off the books, and that's what this is. Yeah. So this is an updating of the television show, frankly.
And it also had episodes of Thor and Daredevil as well at some point.
Those are the TV films that followed. You had, I think, Return of the Incredible Hulk, something like that, and Trial of the Incredible Hulk and Death of the Incredible Hulk, and one of them had Matt Murdock in it. Very light. When he dressed as Daredevil, it was like a black outfit, and you had Thor in it as well. And I can't remember who played Thor. That's an actor we know. Might just look it up actually. Return of the Incredible Hulk. Let's just look it up. Or the Incredible Hulk Returns. Sorry, is that the one with Thor in it? It is. Eric Kramer. He was in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else was he in? I think he might have been in some TV shows as well. But yeah, anyway, so
we should do a Mel Brooks series as well, that'd be funny.
Well, a couple of his films are funny.
I quite like him, but anyway, moving on.
A couple of his films are brilliant, but yeah, a lot aren't. So yeah, I think that's just background on this film. I think that's what we got, and I have to say Lou Ferrigno looks ripped in this.
Yeah, he looks buff. he
sounds
like bodybuilding, doesn't he? So.
No, I'm joking, because he does have a cameo in this. He's the guard, the sort of security guard that lets him through with a pizza at one point.
Yeah, we get kind of all aspects of, because we see Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno. I'm trying not to call.
Well, didn't he play security guard in the Ang Lee Hulk film as well?
He was in that as well. You saw him coming out of the door with Stan Lee, I think.
I think him and Stan Lee are the only people to be in both.
And he does the voice of the Hulk. I don't know if he still does, but he certainly did through like the Avengers and all that. He does the voice of the Hulk.
Oh, makes sense, doesn't it? I'm sure. Yeah, I've always remembered whether he did do something like that or something like that. But yeah.
So yeah, first thoughts, folks.
Becca?
Chris, you can go first.
Oh, I was being a gentleman
there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's one of those films where I enjoy my time with it as I'm watching it, but it doesn't sort of have much to offer other than just like it's just passable entertainment. It's relatively short in comparison to other Marvel films. It's under 2 hours, and I think one of the downfalls of the film, it's not necessarily a downfall so to speak, but the only actual arc in this film is the General Ross character, which is more or less like the villainish kind of guy. He's the only guy that actually goes through like a revelation of any sorts. The main focus is on Bruce and Betty Ross, and they don't really have any journey whatsoever. It's just nothing really changes for them. They just start one place and then in the completely same place really. Just a bunch of stuff happens and there they are. It's just nothing really develops, and I think that's probably the biggest flaw of the film. But other than that, it's kind of it is really just very fast and loose, fun time to watch, but doesn't really give you anything to chew on afterwards.
I would be inclined to agree, actually, to be honest. I think especially compared to the last film, which looked stunning, but I think it started to have like ideas above its station. I guess that's the only way I could think to articulate it. But I definitely enjoyed the set pieces, but I think once this film gets to the halfway mark, things tend to go downhill a little bit. And you've got sort of various plot threads that aren't really developed for me. For example, like there's a storyline with Tim Blake Nelson's character, and there are sort of things that are alluded to that you don't kind of really see again, and aspects to when sorry, I'm forgetting people's names when Tim Roth becomes the Abomination, and there are kind of aspects to his character or sort of traits that he starts to develop that again you don't see, and just all these kind of loose ends. Obviously, they were setting up for a sequel, which never really happened, I suppose. But still, it's just very frustrating for me. Again, before we started recording, we were talking about the effects. I do think I'm just going to go out and say it. This is really stupid and self-centered of me, but the way they style his hair in this film, that really bothered me. I couldn't stop looking at it. I just thought it was so strange and really threw me off. I really couldn't concentrate on anything else.
It looked like a live-action Beano drawing. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, it looked really weird. I'd say you've got this like cartoonish CGI Hulk-style character with this kind of emo-style hair. I think they're probably going for a look similar to like the live-action TV series many years ago, which is fine. But I just felt it wasn't rendered perhaps as well, and the way it was lit was a little bit awkward, and I just drew my attention to it in all the wrong reasons, and I feel really bad for saying that because I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. When we come to Thor, one of my college friends, her brother works for one of the production companies, so I'm going to try and get in touch because I do know there's a lot of work that goes into this, so I kind of feel bad bashing it. But at the same time, it's just like it drew my attention for all the wrong reasons, and it took me out of the film.
The way I see it, I always see it's more a case of how it's managed rather than the people actively doing the work, because I think the people actually doing the work are very talented and are doing the best with what they have in the time they have.
Yeah, they're all artists. They're all artists.
It's budget and time.
Yeah.
This is a $150 million film, which is not that massive in the big scheme of things.
No, I was going to say, it's relatively cheap.
Yeah, I mean, they were making Spider-Man films for well over 200 million by this point, well over 200 million. So, I'm quite happy to bash it. I think the CG in this film looks fucking awful. I'm really quite happy to bash it. Now, the thing is, Chris is absolutely right. It's not really bashing the people. It's not that anyone's done something.
No. It's not the artists themselves. It's just the way it comes across.
Because the thing is, everyone works on everything anyway. There's an awful lot of subcontracting goes on. So, you'll get... I don't know, Industrial Light and Magic or Weta or something involved. Yeah. I don't know so much about Weta because I think they may be New Zealand based, but certainly in America, they will farm out bits of that work to get it done.
And very often, lots of different studios will work on different aspects. So it's the same with any kind of animation type job, especially within like Japanese anime, for example. Because you'll have one main studio doing the production, but they'll farm it out to lots of like the in between sections. It's
the same with video games. There'll be Ubisoft or something. Somebody will be making a game, but parts of their other studios will be doing bits as well. Yeah. And it's budget and time, and frankly, it all looks massively unfinished. Is how it looks. When the Abomination and the Hulk are fighting each other at the end, it just all looks so shiny. It looks like that worst of that millennial rubber, as Alex Shaw, from Digital Drift and School of Movies always used to call it.
It just looks like I want to break out my PS2 and.
Yeah,
it's very PS2 or very PS3.
And I don't get. I mean, if you're going to compare it to the 2003 Hulk, what it does have is a lot more detail. In that there's more musculature, there's more detail of like veins and arteries and all that sort of thing.
It's more defined.
Way more defined than the 2003 Hulk, which was kind of much blockier. But I always felt like that Hulk was there in the scene, whereas this one just looks like a cartoon. I really think the CG in this film is something pretty awful.
And that kind of drew me out. I mean, that's the problem that I had with those kind of films of the early 2000s, obviously coming towards like the mid 2000s as well. But I'd say the effects here were to a point where it would take me out of the film.
We're a year from Avatar at this stage. They could do better by this point, but it is time and money, and they went to Rhythm and Hues. Now, they were a young studio at that stage. I mean, even if you go to an Industrial Light and Magic, you may not get their A team. Do you know what I mean? Because they may be busy on, I don't know, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or something, or Iron Man or whatever. So in that regard, I mean, as for his hairstyle, it's not my favourite sort of iteration of how the Hulk looks, but I can find comic book panels that look a bit like that, to be honest. The 1982 and 1996 cartoon, the Hulk had a hairstyle a bit like that. So it's not unusual, but I fundamentally don't like the design of him. I thought it looked like a cartoon, and I'm really surprised to hear you both kind of agree with me, because I've not heard a lot of that. A lot of it's been so much better than the Ang Lee version to look at, and I don't really see it. So I did have a problem with that in the film. As for I mean that is my first thoughts echo Chris's. Really, not an awful lot happens in this film. There's no great journey for the characters. It's an extended episode of a TV show with a big budget. I like the little nods to the TV show because I loved the TV show. That's why I was excited for this film. I like everyone in it just fine. There are some casting choices from the 2003 version I might sort of switch in if I had a choice, just because I think Sam Shepard is fundamentally a bit more frightening than William Hurt is. But it's okay. But yeah, it's like you say. All right, yes, he goes back to where the accident happened. So in the whole scheme of Bruce Banner's life, some major things happen. But he ends up in kind of a similar place, albeit with a degree of implied control. We can read that from what came later with the Avengers and stuff. But actually, judging this film on its own, and this is 4 years before the Avengers, I don't think anyone was 100% sure what the end of that film meant anyway. But yeah, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't think it's bad. I think what we're going to get next week with sort of Iron Man 2 is probably a bit more entertaining on the face of it, but it doesn't have all those flaws of foreshadowing everything. And the problem is, the Hulk doesn't look like this anymore. Bruce Banner doesn't look like this anymore. Bruce Banner doesn't act like this anymore. He's a very different character as a man as well. We haven't seen William Hurt aside, and that's only since Civil War, I think. We haven't seen any of the other characters again. So it's no wonder to me that this is a forgotten corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And frankly, I wouldn't skip any of them. They're all enjoyable enough. But if you were going to skip one, you'd skip this.
Yeah, I think... I'm trying to think if this actually adds anything, and it actually doesn't. I mean, it does a good job at itself of like rebooting itself from the last Hulk film, but
it introduces the super soldier serum as a concept. So as a tease at the time, it's useful. But I mean, we're going to get that in 2 films' time anyway,
yeah.
Or 3 films' time. Sorry. So I like that, and also just a little sort of taster for Captain America: The First Avenger. I'm going to be very positive about that film, but it's my sort of quantum of solace in that, like, I've been on a journey with that film. I didn't like it when I first saw it. Now, I have to say, the effects of the super soldier serum in the way Blonsky is able to fight the Hulk in that park, I thought was done better than in Captain America. I thought as a little sort of foreshadow for what the super soldier serum can do in a smaller dose, I thought that was really great. But yeah, you don't need this film at all.
No, it doesn't really add anything. I mean, I was actually surprised, like, thinking, oh, they did reference like Captain America, you know, something I completely missed. But then I haven't seen this film in ages.
I guess the last thing I'd say as well is it's probably one of the least funny Marvel films. Now, I do bristle when people go, oh, they're just like fucking light comedy. Well, they're not. But there's a tone to a Marvel film. And this even sits outside of that.
Yeah.
Because Iron Man is a relatively funny character, as played by Downey Jr. There's quite a lot of fish out of water humour around Thor. You know what I mean?
Well, this would have been from, like, when they were trying to, like, they were still trying to figure themselves out. I mean, this is, like, the second film?
Yeah.
And this would have been made
at
in parallel with Iron Man, so they were kind of like, okay, they haven't really found their feet, so to speak, or they thought, okay, we'll have this one a bit different, but obviously it didn't work, so they kind of make it more lighter tone, possibly.
Yeah.
But,
they were filming through the second half of 2007, which is exactly the same as Iron Man, really.
Yeah.
In fact, Iron Man may have started a bit earlier. I think that may have started in the spring. This started in the summer, around now, actually. It says here filming began on July the 9th, which is the day after we record this. So, yeah. Yeah, I think that's it for opening thoughts, isn't it?
Yep.
Shall we discuss?
There's not much, really.
Shall we try and pad out this film sequentially?
I think let's try and make it a short, sharp one, shall we?
No.
I've got 3 hours of this. Let's go.
Let's go. The trouble is now, if we put out a show that's like an hour and 15 or so, I wouldn't want to put that out. That's too short. That's not our format. But yeah, this film is fairly thin. But I do like, we start with an opening credit sequence, which again tells you you're watching an update of the TV show.
That's pretty cool. Though. I did like that a lot, actually. I did get vibes of. To be honest, it's not something I grew up with. I must be honest. I've not seen it, but I'm sort of familiar with the ethos like around it. For example, and Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby. I appreciate why they're so iconic within the series. But it's just I sort of saw a couple of clips on YouTube introduction. I got that vibe. So
what you need to watch is the opening credits.
Exactly. Really. Yeah, that's what I went back and did, and I can appreciate this a lot more.
He gets into a chair that looks exactly the same as the one Edward Norton gets in.
Exactly.
And in the series that follows, I'm just going to send you a link. You can put it on silently if you like. But these are the opening credits to the television show, which you can obviously just play in the background.
Yeah, these are the ones that I saw, and literally,
you see the danger sign as well. That danger.
Danger.
So it's definitely related to that. It's all
exactly that. Yeah, I went back and did that, and I can appreciate these titles because obviously at the time when I saw this at the cinema, obviously I didn't have any knowledge of that, unfortunately. But sort of doing this, coming back, I sort of think, hold on a minute. So I went back and kind of watched, any opening series videos that were on YouTube, and I could appreciate a lot of them all. And plus, the titles are very stylish.
Yeah, I think what I really liked about it is even if you was a bit confusion about if it's a sequel to the last Hulk film or if you didn't know anything about the Hulk previously, this tells you everything you need to know. Really, this brings you up to speed of who the main characters are, generally speaking, what's happening, what do you need to know up to this point, and it kind of
there aren't 20 minutes of tests and stuff.
Yeah, there isn't let's do an origin story again. This does sort of prove that you can jump straight into it and explain who everyone is.
Origin stories work for certain types of characters. They work all right for Iron Man because you see him build the thing, and he goes on an emotional journey as well. With Spider-Man, you can see him bitten, and then you can see him start to see these powers and go, what the fuck's this? And all the rest of it might be a bit overplayed now, but it was certainly valid. With the Hulk, there's no real... The origin is him getting to the accident, that whatever version of it they do, because there's been different versions over the years. In the original comics, it was like a nuclear test or something. He ran out onto a test field to save a character and got hit by the blast. It's probably best done in the credits, and obviously when it's from his perspective thereafter, much taller than everyone else. Then you see him in hospital and bloodied, and actually it does build up that sense of you can see why he doesn't want to Hulk out. Put it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's all done with this kind of haze as well, what you first see when he remembers. Does he remember anything from being the Hulk? And it's just random images rather than actual, or just little moments rather than actual remembering things vividly. It's just I just remember certain parts, which kind of makes you think that's how he remembers it.
That's assuming it is from his memory.
Well, yeah, I just thought that they echoed that.
I think I always felt like he remembered something, otherwise he wouldn't know anything. I don't know. But obviously, so we cut to Rio in Brazil, and we just get endless shots of this, what are they called, favelas?
Favelas, yeah, Brazil, so it's basically kind of like a shanty town.
Yeah.
But it goes on and on and on and on and on, an Ariston. They're huge, they're really vast.
Well, it's got to make up for a plot, hasn't it, so...
Well, it has, literally.
Well, I mean, you do have... I mean, he does keep the camera moving. I can see why they hired him. He does
one thing about Louis Theroux, I mean, he's made... oh god, that's gone out of my head now. Transporter. Yeah, he did make the Transporter, and also Unleashed. So if you want cut, quick moving action films, Leterrier's your man.
I have to say I hated Unleashed. It was crap.
It's an interesting concept.
Danny the Dog.
Yeah, or Danny the Dog, as he shall be known. But just films that that move really quickly, it's cut after cut after cut. And very, very fast paced and action heavy. He must be your guy. Although very plot on character and story.
A bit montagey to start with. He's living in kind of like a little bit of a bedsit. He's got like a dog there. He's working at a bottling plant. That's a real drink, apparently, though they changed the colour of it for this film because it's more like tan colour. Kind of
green,
like
yeah.
Everything's green in this film, though.
It is. It's got a very green tint to it.
I love the Hulk, but it's a bit like the Matrix. You don't have to stick green filters on everything. Just makes it look sickly. I don't like that at all.
Plus, like with when the serum goes into the bottle, you can see it more easily. Can't speak now.
Possibly, yeah. But yeah. So what else? We see him sort of talking with somebody online, and he's also doing things like yoga and stuff like that.
And then you have to breathe.
Yeah, and basically trying to stop spikes. We don't know quite what it is to start with, but spikes in his heart rate. So we can infer from that, and we find out definitively in a while that it's actually his heart rate going over 200 in this film, which I'm not sure is the greatest idea in the world, because that would be astonishingly rare.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I imagine if someone with a heart rate that's like shit, fucking hell.
Yeah, would you not very, very poorly if you had a heart rate like
get this man into theatre, he needs medical attention staff.
Yeah, he'd be very poorly, wouldn't he? Oh dear.
I mean, I always liked, the one thing I miss about Hulk in his current incarnation is I liked the slow change. That comes from the TV show. I like them fighting it, and then the eyes, and then, he's slowly ripping out of his clothes. I love all that, whereas now he just goes bang Hulk. You know what I mean? So I kind of like that element. But yeah, he's working at a bottling plant, and he's just doing handyman stuff and fixing the kit there and things like that.
Yeah, because he does. Yeah, he manages to fix some electricals, and the manager's like, "I should put you on the payroll," and he's like, "No, it's fine."
No, because I don't want to be tracked.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it reminded me of Terminator 3 that way, where he was sort of working on a building site, but doing it off the books and stuff like that. Doesn't own credit cards. Doesn't do anything that can be traced anywhere. He's obviously a fugitive. We find out that he's being chased by a sort of Thunderbolt Ross, although we don't find that out immediately. We've got to get to the first sort of accident of the film. But yeah, he's a fugitive from the US military, because this was a US military test, and it was a super soldier serum program they were trying to recreate. Basically, they were trying to recreate Captain America, effectively, as we later find out. So he's at the bottling plant one day, and he cuts his finger. And Blade, the 1998 film standard CG blood comes out of the wound. This looks shit. But it goes down into, like, we're not quite sure where to start with, but in and amongst the bottles.
Yeah, he does a crap job in, like, sort of seeing where it's gone. It's like you think there must be like a subtle drop somewhere.
He does find a drop.
Yeah,
it's not a bottle.
And then you see where it's really gone and think, "Fucking hell, have you missed that?"
How can you not see that? That's
it's like
so
coated
obvious.
in it almost.
And then it goes into the bottle, and there's a clear blob of blood in it. I'm just thinking, this is not the greatest. Mind you, the plant itself looks like it's about to fall down, and in fact, they knocked it down the week after. They literally kept it open for like a week or two before demolishing it somewhere in the United States where they filmed this.
Oh, right.
And then the crew sort of, or the production company went in and sort of did it up to make it like a working bottling plant, but it's all a bit naff. So he's worried about his blood. He's carried some glue around with him to sort of cover up any cuts or anything like that. And also we see that there's a woman there who clearly likes him, and he's not interested at all, except he does see her start to get sexually harassed.
Yeah.
And he does step in. So there's basically a couple of bullies, aren't there? Well, one in fact, to start with, in and around that plant, who he's now pissed off.
Yeah, it's just the usual sort of, okay, well, I need to keep myself calm because I don't want to get angry. I mean, you have to like the constant like what was it, Days Without Incident? That's a motive.
Yeah, it's Days Without Incident.
I forget what it's a sizable amount, so he's doing
something
well.
like 141 or something like that. It's been a good while.
So he's doing really well. So he's in a good place to keeping calm and keeping low and everything. So, but obviously everything would test him. Because
I don't know, if I was trying to avoid hulking out and my heart rate was the problem, that I'd go to a super hot climate and live in like a massively overcrowded favela.
I don't know, where would you go though?
I don't know, might you go somewhere a bit cooler and more rural?
Sure.
I don't know.
I know, it's really, like, for somebody, yeah, he's trying to keep his heart rate low in a very unstressful environment.
Shouldn't he be in Canada or something?
He does go to
Yeah, 'cause no one goes to
British
Canada.
Columbia, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, much of this film is actually made in Toronto, well, obviously, in or near around Toronto, so.
I've been to the street where they filmed the final battle.
That was really cool.
What, you mean that was in New York?
One of the longest streets in the country. Bits of it are filmed in New York.
Young Street, I think it is.
The final battle where they had to shut streets off and have cars be flung about and stuff. They shot that. They shot that in Canada, in Toronto.
Yeah, I've been to Toronto generally. It's a lovely city. I can recommend if anybody hasn't been and they'd like to visit. I recommend you visit.
It's like a smaller, cleaner New York.
Very clean, very clean.
Yeah.
We did like a tour of the East Coast, and after visiting like New York and similar cities, I was just shocked by how clean it was. I was like, oh, this is like being at home.
Yeah, it's I can't remember the name of the street, but it's actually one of the longest streets in the country, if not the longest street in the country, and it goes right out of the city.
I think it's literally like Young Street or something like that.
It's one of the streets that it got strange regulations for different areas there. I think it's the one area where you can have like pawn shops and things like that.
Just because it's so big.
But yeah, I've been to that street where they filmed it. But yeah, one thing it does do is the one thing that impressed me about this film on first watch is we want to see the Hulk, yet the story has taken me enough that I didn't want him to Hulk out. I was with him trying to keep himself calm and all the rest of it.
Well, he's done a good job so far. You want to keep him on track. Oh, come on, you're doing really well. You don't want to.
Yeah, don't fuck this up. You got such a beautiful apartment and everything. Yeah, that bottle goes to the United States. We see it all bottled up, and it's heading from Brazil to the United States. The next thing we see, Stan Lee's drinking it, and drops it, and basically has gamma radiation poisoning.
See, I was expecting something to happen, like have a massive arm or something, or there be some sort of like visual gag.
I'm glad
he just drinks it and goes, "Oh."
Yeah.
It undermines it that they used him for that, because he's always the comic relief anyway, and this isn't meant to be comedic. But anyway, word gets to the military that there's been a poisoning incident. He says where, and of course he's then got to put a team together to go and get this guy, particularly if he hulks out. So he calls in Emil Blonsky, who is
a Cockney US military guy
from Russia.
Well, no, he's brought in from the Royal Marines, the UK Marines.
Is he? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought he was.
And he's Russian-born, hence I don't know the comics well enough, so I don't know.
I'm gonna say, I'm not familiar with this character.
I thought it was odd casting, but there you go.
I think that's quite interesting, because there was an interview with him. He's saying, it'd be quite interesting to see how like a Cockney man plays a villain. But I mean, it's very solid. I think when he becomes the Abomination, it's a little bit dodgy.
Even shit with CG.
That's my point. In a less roundabout way. But Tim is a solid choice, and any film he's in, always happy to watch him. Happy to see him here. I'm just glad he's not doing a weird accent.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most unrealistic thing about the character is when he claims to be 39.
Yeah.
So, Tim Roth was a good decade older than that at that point, or close to anyway.
Yeah.
Originally was going to be KGB, wasn't he? But he said no, wants to be.
Yeah, and you've now got. We find out that Liv Tyler, Betty Ross, is his daughter, and they don't speak anymore. Very like Hulk in that regard. And yeah, he puts a team together to go down and get this guy. So at the very same time as those guys he stopped harassing, or the guy he stopped harassing that woman, come after him, the US have sent in the military to get him as well. So yeah, from there basically they find him, or they find his apartment, but he's already I think he knows that. How does he know they're there? Because he climbs out the window, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He knows they're there.
Doesn't the dog bark?
Possibly, it could be that. They
basically camera on his door, don't they?
He gets out the window, and at the same time, he's spotted by the guy that harassed the woman. So they're chasing him, and the military are chasing him at the same time through the sort of streets of this shantytown.
Yeah.
And I think this is quite effective, just because I don't want him to Hulk out. I think, well, the character must have taken me a little bit then.
I think so. This is actually a good set piece, like a good general action scene.
Plays to Leterrier's strengths because it keeps moving.
Yeah. My only problem with it, because it happens this early on, I don't think it gives me enough to actually get involved. But as you say, David, it's like if you're like, I generally don't want to see him Hulk out.
Yeah.
You know, so it does work so, but I do appreciate. I think it's actually well thought out. I think it's well conceived.
He keeps stopping. And he keeps stopping and checking his heart rate and all that, and trying to remember the breathing. But he doesn't have a lot of time. They're going to trank him. They're not going to kill him at this stage. But all bets are off once they get him back to the United States. So we definitely want him to get away. And he basically ends up. I think he ends up in the bottling plant, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And they corner him, the guys, and start to give him a bit of a beating. He's warning them not to.
Yeah, you say you won't like me when I'm angry. Though it was hungry before because he got his.
Yeah, he got the word wrong. So I think he was hangry about 10 years before it became popular.
Yeah, I don't know if that works in that language. Are the words even remotely similar? I don't know. But anyway,
I don't know. I'd have to open this up to our Portuguese listeners if we have any.
Now the eyes turn green. Now in the Incredible Hulk TV show, these turn kind of a greeny white. And I think one of my big CG problems is the eyes. The eyes constantly look like fucking
neon bright green.
They look like the lights you'd have in your in a self-made computer cabinet or something. They look.
I think it's quite a cool effect though.
It's cool. It's all right when you see his eyes turn.
Yeah.
But when it's actually the Hulk, the eyes, if you go and look at the Ruffalo Hulk, his eyes are much more of a normal brightness. They're just green. In fact, they may not even be green, I'm not quite sure. If they are, they're subtle. But there's nothing subtle about this painting of him. But basically,
it looks great when he's transforming, especially that shot like in the dark, you see his eyes just light up.
Yeah.
That's really effective.
Yes.
But I see what you mean, and probably might want to try and maintain the consistency. Well, he's got green eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically Hulk's out, and then he does his Hulk shit, which basically sort of smashes one guy against the wall, and then basically you got Tim Roth doing his military shit.
It's largely in the dark. But you do get like big vats being pushed and thrown around. It is dangerous. You could be killed by this thing. But I think we do hear him speak. He just has to be left alone. He just wants to be left alone. He manages to get away and basically incapacitate them. And I think he wakes up in like Bolivia or something. He wakes up over the border somewhere. And that's that. That was the end of our first sort of action sequence. Before he left Brazil, we find out he was talking to a guy who called himself Mr. Blue. And Mr. Blue is obviously some scientist who's trying to work with him on the quiet to try and cure him. So he did try something with like a serum made out of a flower, basically. And he was told that his gamma levels were down, even though it didn't cure him. He tried it on his blood, and it got overtaken by the sort of green cells, if you like, straight away. So there's definitely an urge to get back to the US on the quiet, because they're saying, like, it's too dangerous, but it's the only way I'm going to cure you. I need more of your history. I need samples, and all the rest of it. He has sent a blood sample, which is how they know the gamma's down. So I guess the next thing is he's trying to get back into the United States.
Yeah, so he hitches a ride, and we hear the Sag Hulk theme.
Yeah.
And we have Ross and Cockney Roth. But basically, he tries to dismiss Roth, doesn't he? He's like, okay, well, we tried. Thanks for your time.
No, I know what I saw.
Yeah.
And also, he's pissed he's pissed off his career's coming to an end in terms of being an active soldier. Hence the 39, I think. That idea that he'll be over the hill very quickly. So, and
he doesn't want to like an armchair kind of position.
He doesn't want to be.
He always wants to be in the action.
Yeah, so he says we might be able to do something about that. So he injects him with a bit of a serum. which seems to sort of fuck his skeleton a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Anger him a bit.
They inject it into his bone marrow as well, so that'll play that kind of.
Yeah.
Give it that. I suppose you would have to do it for the frame as well as the skin tissue. But yeah, doesn't sound very wise. You think you would probably want to do some checks on his mentality first?
I know you've worked with him for 5 fucking minutes. But anyway, Banner comes back to I don't even know where it is. Where is that? Saying Culver University here. I'm not quite sure where that is. Actually, not knowing the United States that well, or not parts of the United States very well. And in fact, it's probably. Oh, it says Virginia. Okay. All right. So he's getting there to try and get some data. He needs some data on the original accident, and that's where Betty works. Betty's dating Ty, whatever he's called, Ty Burrell.
Yeah.
Leonard Sampson.
The guy who makes the Blade Runners. Yeah, him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Just a joke.
It's okay.
Yeah. Again, all of these characters have histories we're probably not that aware of. Where do we go from there?
Well, he goes to Albert Einstein for some shelter.
He is about Einstein for pizza.
Yeah. Pizza and advice.
Got a fun fact about him coming up later on.
It's always an older man running a bar or a fucking restaurant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a fun fact about him coming up soon.
Okay. Yeah.
His relation to previous Hulk iterations.
He poses as a pizza guy, doesn't he, to get in?
Yeah.
And that's the Lou Ferrigno character. He gets what he needs, I think.
Yeah, he gets the data, and then he comes back. Only to find out that obviously because they're friends from life, so he's friends with Betty as well, the Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
And they.
He's in the restaurant. Betty's in there with this. Yeah. He's her guy, and when he moves his head for something, she spots Bruce right in her line of vision. Yeah. But unfortunately, we find out her boyfriend tips off Ross. We don't think we find that out immediately.
No, it's said later on, but the boyfriend role is just, it is just kind of really fucking redundant.
Not necessary at all. He could have been spotted by anyone, couldn't he? But again, I suppose it's like the life moving on without him, and that's the one he loves, and
but
can't
with
be
no
with
consequences because she just goes went straight to him anyway. So it's like, well,
that's the problem. It's like, well, that's going to be insurmountable for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Until she basically...
And plus he's fine with it as well. He's like, by halfway through the film, he's like, he's not even bothered that he's just...
It's like when Bill Pullman's dumped in a film, he's always like, good luck to you.
Oh.
It was like Sleepless in Seattle. She dumps him for someone she's never met, and he's like, good luck to you, more or less. Okay, so they basically corner him at a park at the university, don't they?
Yeah, we'll get into the next
next Hulk out. There's not that long before that happens.
No.
So Samson has basically tipped off Ross. Ross has given some serum to Blonsky. Liv Tyler, Betty Ross, is aware of Bruce, and I think she kind of goes towards him on the park, and he knows that the military are there and just asks her to get out of there.
Yeah, not the most subtle of tactics, is it? Now, am I inclined to believe that it was Courtney Roth who acted like rashly? Because Colonel Ross did say like, "Fucking hell, he's jumped the gun."
Well, Bruce gets sort of cornered. Well, not cornered. He's in there by himself, but he's locked in to like a glass walkway between two buildings, and this is where the CG really, really is awful. And they fire in some gas, and the fear makes him Hulk out. So you just see the green eyes as the sort of smoke envelops him, and the next thing he comes.
You see Betty get like attacked, getting taken down by shoulders. She's like running
Yes.
trying to or do something. I don't know what, but
I don't know. Don't know what she was trying to do. She's just trying to stop them, I think.
Yeah.
But there was no plan for how to do that. But I remember it was in all the trailers, I think, of him bursting out of that sort of glass atrium and landing on the floor. And it might as well be a fucking cartoon. It looks terrible.
Yeah, CG doesn't look great here, unfortunately.
Didn't look good at the time either. It's not just age, it looks shit.
I mean, if it was a TV show, then they'll be like, "Oh wow, this is actually pretty decent." But
there was talk of a TV show for a while. Guillermo del Toro was going to be involved in a TV show,
Yeah,
and it was going to use this model. They were going to spin it off into a TV show, and they were going to use the sort of properties that Rhythm and Hughes had created. So it would have been this version of the Hulk. On TV, it wouldn't look as bad anyway, and not only that, you'd see less of it because it's expensive to animate. I just don't like this at all. It just looks unfinished. There's tons of detail there, but it just needs like countless more rendering passes. And then there's this battle in the sort of field, which is kind of one of the better sequences in the film, in that Blonsky is like really balletic and really fast and really agile because of the serum. And I swear it shows it better than Captain America will in three films' time. That ability that the serum gives you. So that's pretty good.
yeah, like just jumping around. I mean, I think it's shot quite nicely. Like he does like move well. His character, but
it all just seems really dumb. You got to quietly take this guy down. He was under orders to fucking trank him first time, and he's in a wide open space, and they've now made him Hulk out. It's just like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is so silly.
Like the military tactics in this film are just really stupid. It makes me annoyed for like how military are portrayed.
That really surprised me about this film, actually.
It's usually the case in films. They usually portray them as like very gun-ho, very much like just like...
Especially if they're trying to keep, if
there's a problem,
sensitive situation under wraps, they go in there, all guns blazing, it's just like...
Yeah, and I just think, well, okay, I understand in some instances, but... realistically, I don't think we would typically see the military act this way.
No, I mean I've got a friend who's known a lot of military people, and he's also like worked with them as an adjunct of police work and all the rest of it. And he said the thing is, you go and watch something like Aliens, and they're all fucking complete meatheads. Yeah. And they're portrayed that way but you start buying into it. You just think, you just get fucking dumb cannon fodder. And he just said, if you ever work with the military, they're just so phenomenally efficient when they're on any kind of manoeuvre.
Sure, they're all switched on.
Because it has to be.
It's much more Zero Dark 30 than it is this, certainly. And, Blonsky's been brought in as a career military guy who should know fucking better. But I guess, he has to Hulk out.
Yeah,
that's what kind of really surprises me. He should. Yeah. He really should know a lot better, a lot better than.
But the action sequence is pretty good, and he's ridiculously brave at this point now. He's just throwing himself right into it. Betty gets herself caught in the crossfire. They try and shoot him with this kind of cannon of sound, don't they?
Yeah, and again, it's
cannon.
Like we spend like about 5 minutes of the sequence of them just aimlessly like firing machine guns on it, and I'm thinking, surely you'd know this wouldn't work. Like,
they literally just fire a barrage of shots at him, and it's just like, really? So
we as the audience know, like, well, bullets do fuck all, like, or grenade launchers, all this kind of like stuff doing that does fucking nothing. I mean, even when like the idea of Roth Super Soldier going in there, like, what's he gonna do? Like, he's going to jump around a bit, alright, but he's not going to fucking do anything to it, though, is he?
Bear in mind, the Hulk has been created in an attempt to recreate the Super Soldier program.
Yeah.
The idea that you go, well, this is just safe to inject.
This is fine.
But the
not
point...
really any problem.
And he's not a doctor. He's not like... he's not a scientist.
No.
He's a military guy. So, I mean, had that been one of the people involved in the original experiment, and he'd gone, look, he gave himself a massive dose. If you start with this, we don't think there would be any dangerous side effects. Then fair enough. But he's just like, just inject some into him.
Well, he did say we'll get like a small dose at first, and we'll see how we go with any side effects. Like, point. They do make that point, but
he just comes off as an idiot, Ross, in this. Whereas in the 2003 film, Ross came off as distant. He did come off as, you can see why his daughter didn't get on with him, and he came off as officious and all about the mission, but he didn't come off. It doesn't surprise me at the end of the film when I see Ross in a bar, like, a bit pissed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, the Sam Shepard version of the character wasn't like that at all, and I do prefer that version, but then maybe this is better suited to this plot.
Possibly. I mean, this is more popcorn fare type stuff. I think his character here is just probably... He's just got an agenda. He just wants to see the scientific experiment stuff he was doing with, get it done, and he's not really thinking about...
She put his daughter in hospital as well. He put his daughter in hospital, so I think there's a bit of, like, callous rage in it as well, which wasn't quite the case in Hulk. So, I mean, it's all right, and it's a pretty decent action sequence. The CG keeps pulling me out of it because I really think it's that bad, and maybe I'm overstating it. But the way they have Blonsky move, I always really impressed me. I always like that.
Yeah, even before he had the serum, he had like really good, like, you know, efficient, like, action to him. But again, it's like, you know, all right, I buy the stuff before he hulked out by he gassed the thing. Okay, that makes sense because he could pass out and then he can whatever.
Yeah.
Once he hulks out, get those like sound cannons in, because they're the only one. There's your best plan there.
Yeah, and if
We
that
haven't seen those before
Like,
since, have we?
why waste time with like I know, let's fire a bunch of shit at him, that won't work. Like, what's
I think it's the whole point of once he hulks out, you've lost.
Yeah.
You've already seen him once. You saw him down in that bottling plant. You know how powerful this thing is. You don't know all the details, but you've had a taste of it. And I just think the whole point is you try and trank him without him knowing. So he's passed out before. They gas him, which immediately induces fear, which means he's more likely to hulk out. Well, maybe they don't know that. But they saw him hulk out. He saw it through the night vision goggles. So he knew that you could infer some kind of stress induces this. And I just think, basically, once he hulks out, you've got maybe one shot with the cannons once you realise your guns don't work, and then you're out of there. You've got to wait for him to calm down and go at it another day. But they just go on and on and on. It ends in an explosion which almost kills Betty, and it's only the Hulk that protects her.
And probably kills other soldiers, because that helicopter just crashes and everything.
Yeah, so you've got that team are dead pretty much. I must say, I feel bad for Betty in this film. She doesn't come off. She comes off as a kind of a sort of Fay Ray style character. I mean, she's
a bit of a damsel.
Just a little bit. I do like Liv Tyler. She's a really good actress. Loved her in the Lord of the Rings series. Brilliant. But yeah, just in here, she's a little bit of a damsel in distress. There's a little bit of agency, obviously, because she is Ross's daughter. And perhaps without her connections, obviously, you wouldn't be able to kind of go forward. But yeah, I do get the impressions of a little bit of damsel in distress sometimes.
I don't know what to think about that.
I know that's just my personal feeling. I'm probably wrong, but that's just what I feel anyway. But I mean,
you're not wrong.
Yeah, Liv Tyler's a really good actress. So.
I like Liv Tyler just fine, and in fact, I've heard reviews on the past that were mocking her, and they were saying what did they do to her face? And I'm thinking, what are they on about? Like she was wearing a load of Botox or something. I don't see it. Liv Tyler looks pretty good in this film.
Yeah, I mean, she looks. I mean, if I could be misogynistic for just a moment, she looks pretty fine in that.
Yeah, she does.
But I don't mean that as being really. What I'm saying is she does have she's believable as someone who you would be madly in love with. So for Ed Norton to be to be that sort of distant,
and it's a different take on the character. I mean, I've talked a lot, haven't I, about passive and active sort of actors, and Jennifer Connelly is much more of a sort of calm centre. She suits that Hulk film. This version of the character is a lot more up and running around and trying to stop things and all that sort of thing. So maybe a recast works. I don't know. I think the character's a bit wasted, and we've never seen her again. And she doesn't even seem to be in Bruce.
Because she's kind of replaced by Black Widow now.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah.
Although even that, there's been very little of that since Age of Ultron.
I know.
But yeah.
I know, it's just a bit weird. It's
they've written this film out of their own history, really. We'll talk about it a little bit next week, because this is happening at the same time as Iron Man 2, effectively. And we cover that a little bit. We'll cover that a little bit next week. And then enough of the backgrounds given in the Avengers film, that in some respects it's given you enough of the details from this film that you don't need it really. It's a shame, but obviously at this point in the film, the Hulk gets out of there with Betty.
Yeah.
And they end up kind of sat in a thunderstorm in like a little cave
just off where like a waterfall somewhere like that in there.
Yeah.
Near the forest.
I've seen that in the comic books. It may even be in Hulk Grey, which I've read. I've certainly seen that in a comic book that I've read.
It's the Hulk cave.
There's a plot point in there where he gets away with Betty and they're sat there and he's raging at the weather and stuff like that. It's the only time the Hulk looks okay in animation as well.
I must say, I did quite like how he looked in the scene, for example.
He looked pretty good in the rain, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, definitely. I think in throughout the whole of this film, this is probably the one scene where he actually looks not like a video game character. And he looks kind of more...
Probably the darkness, kind of covers a bit.
Yeah, it seems like he's lit more effectively.
And you look different when your skin looks different when it's wet anyway. So it's things like that. The very first shot of him in the final battle looks good. The sort of trailer shot and the one that's on the DVD. So that looked all right. But yeah, everything else looks garbage except this scene. And I quite like this scene. It's just a tender moment. I like it. They need,
You need time to calm down, don't you?
It gives Betty an understanding as well, because the last time she'd seen this creature, it put her in hospital. And now it's just saved her. And she's actually realising that that's Bruce in there. He doesn't want to hurt anything, and she's seen him like rage at the weather. So there's like a mindlessness to the character. So I think it is a small piece of character work.
Yeah, I do like the scene as well. It works well.
So then they go to a hotel and don't fuck.
Nearly fuck.
You can't get too excited.
That would be really fucking frustrating, wouldn't it?
It has to be like the least sexy scene.
Well, but how fucking over the top is his sexual technique? I mean, I'm sure my heart rate's never gone up to 200.
I mean, just a tip, possibly. I don't know.
I mean, how powerfully does he bash away to get it up to that? He must be like a Black and Decker fucking...
Yeah, but how often does everyone have a heart rate of 200 odd? I mean...
Christ almighty, I mean, he hasn't had any for a while, I know. But, like, surely she could give him a quick handy or something.
I was going to say, there must be ways around it, I'm sure.
If
Clearly
you know a way around getting your heart rate up to 200 beats per minute during sexual intercourse, write to us and expect us to talk at gmail.com.
I mean, does this work the same way when he masturbates?
I don't know. I mean, why is this guy not in a permanently shit mood?
Why is he not like a permanent erection? Like,
yeah, he just like gets on a bus or in the back of a cab, an immediate stiffy.
Because it moved a certain way.
Moved a tiny bit.
Yeah, like in this film, there is a running joke about having to buy like the stretchiest pants. I wonder about his underwear.
Well, I just think, like, they must, in that cab, they must go past, like, a bra advert or something on a fucking billboard, and he immediately shoots in his pants. Yeah. This guy has not had any sexual contact of any type in at least 5 years.
No.
Because apparently his technique is so athletic, his heart rate goes up to 200 beats per minute.
Wow. It's bizarre how he's not got a queue of ladies working around the corner.
I don't quite buy that, but he doesn't. They're still the regard for each other. They buy clothes and all the rest of it. She cuts his hair. That's a little bit like the Terminator when they're on the run, just staying in these little motels and stuff.
Yeah, there is probably more character work with these lot than there is actual development. There's no actual journey to go on really, but you do get like a sense to be with them more often, don't you?
Yeah, now, I think this is probably sort of because this is a sort of lull between the sort of action pieces and plot pieces, of course. Probably a good time to talk about why Edward Norton isn't in these films anymore. And you mentioning another cut made me think about that. Edward Norton, there was a big fight over... He refused to promote this film at all, as far as I recall. And... there were talk at the time that there was a lot of debate over the cuts of the film. Edward Norton was involved in writing some of this and rewriting some of it, and apparently he was cutting his own version. And it was just, he wanted the longer version that had, there's this kind of a cut suicide sequence in it that is referred to by Ruffalo in a later film, where he says, "I shot myself," and the other guy spat the bullet out. That scene was in this film. He's in ice somewhere, and he goes to try and end it, and of course it just makes him Hulk out. And it's, so he wasn't necessarily, so I think he thought he was important. You know, he was the leading man, new franchise, was involved in writing, thought he could like get involved in cutting it. Very like, I mean, American History X has a very similar sort of history where like he fell out with the director and stuff and debates over all the rest of it. Anyway, they carry on, and a couple of years later, there was talk that they were in talks with him to get him into the Avengers, and they put out a statement. They suddenly stopped negotiating, and Kevin Feige put out this statement. It says, "We have made the decision to not bring Edward Norton back to portray the title role of Bruce Banner in the Avengers. Our decision is definitely not one based on monetary factors, but instead rooted in the need for an actor who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members. The Avengers demand players who thrive working as part of an ensemble, as evidenced by Robert, Chris H, Chris E, Sam Scarlett, and all of our talented cast. We are looking to announce a name actor who fulfills these requirements and is passionate about the iconic role in the coming weeks." That's a bit of a fucking burn, isn't it, to say the least?
Yeah, you're not a team player, basically. That's
right.
Basically what you're saying.
Now, the next quote, the quote in reply is a bit long, but I will read it all, so forward on a minute if you don't want to hear this, listeners. But the agency that represented replied. And they said, "This offensive statement from Kevin Feige at Marvel is a purposefully misleading, inappropriate attempt to paint our client in a negative light. Here are the facts. 2 months ago, Kevin called me and said he wanted Edward to reprise the role of Bruce Banner in the Avengers. He told me it would be his fantasy," don't believe that, "to bring Edward on stage with the rest of the cast at Comic-Con and make it the event of the convention. When I said that Edward was definitely open to this idea, Kevin was very excited, and we agreed that Edward should meet with Joss Whedon to discuss the project. Edward and Joss had a very good meeting, confirmed by Feige to me, at which Edward said he was enthusiastic at the prospect of being part of the ensemble cast. Marvel subsequently made him a financial offer to be in the film, and both sides started negotiating in good faith. This past Wednesday, after several weeks of civil, uncontentious discussions, but before we had come to terms on a deal, a representative from Marvel called to say they decided to go in another direction with the part. This seemed to us to be a financial decision, but whatever the case, it's completely their prerogative, and we accepted their decision with no hard feelings. We know a lot of fans have voiced their public disappointment with this result, but this is no excuse for Feige's mean-spirited, accusatory comments. Counter to what Kevin implies here, Edward was looking forward to the opportunity to work with Joss and the other actors in the Avengers cast, many of whom are personal friends of his. Feige's statement is unprofessional, disingenuous, and clearly defamatory. Mr. Norton's talent, timeless work ethic, and professional integrity deserve more respect, and so do Marvel's fans." So it got rather nasty.
Very much so.
One more quote, and then I'll stop bothering you with long quotes. But about 4 years later, he was asked about it again.
Edward Norton or Kevin Feige?
Edward Norton.
Okay.
And he said, "My feeling was that I experimented and experienced what I wanted to. I really, really enjoyed it. And yet I look at the balance of time in life that one spends not only on making these sorts of films, but especially putting them out and the obligations that rightly come with that." He went on to say that he wanted more diversity with his career, pointing out that the schedules for films he's appeared in recently, including Moonrise Kingdom, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and Birdman, would have conflicted with the Avengers films. He added that he didn't want to be associated with just one iconic character. He went on to say, "I think you can do sort of do anything once, but if you do it too many times, it becomes a suit that's hard to take off in other people's eyes." So that's all the different sides. Now, you've got to remember, around 2010, we'd had a recast of Rhodey as well.
Yes.
So it did come off that like Marvel were just lowballing everyone, and also Kevin Feige, who's always come off as really personable.
Yeah.
I didn't know him at the time, and suddenly putting out quotes saying he's not a team player, I just thought that's so unprofessional.
It does sound very dodgy.
I don't know what to think, but certainly they did not love Edward Norton. And
No.
he wanted to cut the film himself, and it might be possible he was asking for more money than they wanted to pay.
Well, he didn't have it. He didn't. Start again. He's kind of known for rewriting a lot of films that he starred in. But for this one, like, he actually kind of lobbied because he rewrote numerous drafts of the script, and he lobbied to have the written writer's credit on this. But that only went to Zach Penn in the end. It's just one of those things. He does have quite. I don't know. He usually has quite a considerable creative input in the films that he works in. Not only in front of the camera, but I think there's a lot of creative clashes on this film as well.
Yeah.
So he just likes to kind of be a bit involved, and it's like Marvel probably thought
They probably thought
we'd
no.
rather not have someone who wants to be like an actor be that involved in whatever we decide to do. So let's just recast.
We'll never know the truth of it, but the quotes I've read you there, certainly the first two, do not suggest it was a happy party. And we know that he was arguing over Final Cut to the degree that he didn't get that involved in promotion of the film.
No.
Now, if they did start negotiating with him in 2010, what happened in those negotiations? Certainly that it led to them putting out a statement saying, we want a team player. So I don't know. What was he asking for? We'll never know now. But then there are directors like Wes Anderson and others who work with him again and again. So we got to be a bit careful about defaming Edward Norton there, because he does work with people multiple times.
Well, you never know, do you? That's the thing. You never know what happens. I mean, it could just be from a bad experience for whatever reason, and then that's it. It's like the thing that Val Kilmer is really difficult to work with.
But you hear that from multiple people, to be fair.
Do you?
Yeah. But then we'll talk about that on... No, there's no series with Val Kilmer and I can think of it.
We've done the only possible one with Batman.
Maybe.
All right. So, I mean, he has worked with Wes Anderson three or four times. So, I don't know. But certainly, I thought there's kind of a lull in the film here, and I just thought there wasn't going to be an obvious place at the end of the episode, really. The only other place to talk about it would have been when we got to the Avengers, and that's a big film with a lot of characters in it, so I didn't want to waste too much time on the whole there. But so they head for New York now, and this is to meet Dr. Samuel Stearns.
Yeah, I mean, they get in a cab that drives recklessly. I'm surprised to be able to drive that fast in the middle of New York. Quite honestly.
Well, having been there, you don't have a very high average speed in most places.
No.
Do you?
I'm pretty sure we pulled over by the police as well. But it does lead to a funny joke where Betty's dead angry, and I've got some good techniques to.
Yeah. Well, I did like the bit where she wants to get the subway, and he's like, me in a metal box with
surrounded by a bunch of people, and probably the most
and the most high stress aggressive city in the world. Let's get a taxi.
So they head to meet Samuel Stearns, who I did actually know from the cartoon. He became the leader, another character with sort of a gamma thing, but he was green with like a massive brain, effectively. There's hints of it at the end of this film, but obviously we'll never
see him again.
We'll see him again now. It's been 10 years, and they're going to suddenly bring the character back now, even if
that would be amazing, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. He's actually, when they get there, they realise that let's deal with the antidote first. They meet him, and they do a test where they basically try and induce a Hulk out and then reverse it. And they do. And Leterrier here referenced an American Werewolf in London.
Yes.
Particularly with like the way the shoulder comes out and appears to almost dislocate. He said when you watch an American Werewolf in London, he said some of the sounds they put on were like bone stretching and breaking and stuff like that. And he wanted that. It's actually not a bad effect. Him sort of part hulking out and then sort of calming down. That looks all right. But then we realise he's got a ton of blood there. He's basically synthesized samples into, basically to make more of it, which is a little bit of a worry. And Banner basically wants to wants to destroy that. Oh, the other thing is Blonsky was kicked against the tree, wasn't he, at the end of that battle? Another thing with absolutely, they thought he was like fucked. He was in traction and all sorts, but he like recovers in a couple of days because of the super soldier serum, and they basically join up to go to New York to try and take down the Hulk. Basically, the third time of asking.
And he's looking a little bit more like.
He's starting to look unwell, and his spine is poking out slightly. Although not when he's dressed, you just see him when he's looking in the mirror later on. He doesn't look well, and his temperament's gone as well. He's kind of a bit ruthless at this point.
With not very well line dialogue, really. Just like, how do you feel? Like a monster.
Yeah, like an abomination, I think. Oh no, Stern says
it is for like a monster, doesn't it?
No, but but that does come
Stern
later
says
with.
It could be an abomination.
Yeah, which is like.
Well, I don't think he's called that by name, is he? I think that's just what he's known as. I think I remember I read about that in like Empire or Total Film, one of those magazines. I don't think he's actually called it by name.
They find a way now. I think they're less inclined to sort of hide comic book origins in that. It's like Catwoman wasn't called Catwoman in the Nolan films and stuff like that. It's Nolan. So they basically break in there. They know where he is, and they finally do what they were trying to do the first time, which is just to tranquilize Bruce. So he and Betty are taken in, but in the interim, Blonsky has spotted all this blood and knows what it is and knows what it can do, and basically demands that he's given a shot of it. And so that's the final turn.
Full insane.
He's gone full insane, gets basically filled with it all, and we see that his spine come out into the abomination, and it's a horrible effect again. Just looks really shiny. It's like episode 2, something like that. It's really even worse than. Looks terrible, but he's transformed into this thing that's like 11 foot tall, bigger than the Hulk, and then goes on a rampage through New York. I don't know what his goals are here. All right, he wants to be a fighting machine, but what is this? He's become.
Yeah, I don't really get why he wants to do it. His motivation.
I think the implication that he's just getting insane, just getting fueled by rage and desire of like power of.
Just wants to be a super soldier.
Whatever the serum is, it's like there's references of like there's it's almost like godlike, and it's just that drunk on that wanting more of this. Whatever it is, he's just hooked on it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because he's like, oh, give me that, I want to be that, and it's like, okay.
And he's not even thinking, relatively speaking.
No, he just drives him around the bend slowly.
Yeah, he's just full of just like, I just want to fight, he's driven by his desire to basically fight the Hulk. He's ticked off that he's like bested him like once and twice, now he wants to go again. No, I want to have him. So he just felt like just needs to fight, really, and that's all there is. But
right. Not brilliant, is it?
No. Well, no. I mean, the film doesn't do enough to kind of justify too much. I mean, really, it's got a short running time. It's another one of those films that actually would breathe a bit better with a few more scenes, which I think is what Ed Norton was arguing. To be fair, he wanted a longer cut of this. Yeah. He just said all the character work and stuff's being cut out of it, was what I was hearing. And he's sort of right, actually. Yeah. No, that's not to say I would have liked an actual plot for the characters, but... But the problem with Hulk is I can't think of what he can do with the character in isolation.
No.
Other than, like, an origin story, or than about someone who's dealing with their anger. But...
Yeah. The last thing we see of Stearns, he gets a bit of the blood into a wound on his head from where he's been attacked by Blonsky, and he starts to mutate as well. But we don't see. That's just a little teaser of potentially the leader in a future film, but obviously that never happened. At the same time, they're flying away in kind of a plane or a helicopter or whatever it is. It's a helicopter. Betty and Bruce. But of course they see what's happening on the ground, and they're getting reports in of this sort of thing.
Yeah, you have the military doing what they normally do in these films, and
just
fire
yeah,
missiles.
just
you think priority one would be like, okay, well let's evacuate people,
evacuate,
evacuate,
evacuate.
or let's drive them away from the public into like an isolated area or something.
But no.
No, we'll just fire
the
rockets
funniest
at it.
military reaction in a film was, I think, Fast 7. Was it Fast 7 or Fast 8? Fast 8. Fast 7 it was. Where there was like vehicular warfare in downtown LA, and the military reaction was not to go out at all. They were like, looks like these guys have got it.
They've got it already covered.
Yeah, so
should we go there? No, Vin Diesel's in his car. Alright, well, he's got it sorted.
no. I'm sure The Rock's gonna like rip his cast off and rip a gun out from fucking.
He's got it. Fine.
I just love that. The press are reporting on it and no one's doing anything. No police, no fucking military, no nothing. I turned to my friend in the cinema, why have they not scrambled the military? Anyway, so yeah, he basically wants to go down and try to fight this thing. They're like, Bruce, you don't even know if you've been cured. We've stopped a Hulk out. You may not transform. He's eventually released to do it. He jumps off the back of the helicopter. Doesn't transform in midair, and then hits the ground hard, and obviously clearly transforms then.
I think this scene, I really like the scene concept. I think it's completely rushed here. Just you think about what this scene could have been. This could have been like a really sort of tense, sort of really sort of almost like powerful. Like I'm literally risking my life. It's do or die. Like I will jump off. I don't know if it'll happen. But I have to.
He wanted another thing. Norton wanted a bit more of a monologue there, apparently.
Yeah.
And it does become, I've got to try.
So basically saying Norton was right about it, really.
Well, we don't know what his version would look like, but every time I hear something he said, and now we're reviewing it, I'm thinking, my idea of where you fix it is exactly what he said. And the whole thing where they cut him trying to kill himself. Or at the very
least, it's not going to harm it to at least have whatever his idea was.
Yeah, it was just like, I mean, even the suicide scene, I think that should have been in there for his desperation.
Mm. But it does make sense, like the whole suicide bit where particularly when he sort of lands on the floor here, it kind of like the Hulk kicks in when he needs it to. It's like it could be instantaneous.
But the point is, Leterrier said they cut out that suicide scene because they've got something like it at the end of the film, and I'm going, no, you haven't.
Yeah. He's
not trying to commit suicide here. He's trying to scare himself into hulking out.
Maybe it was brevity at the end of it.
I think it was just studio. They wanted to keep it short. They weren't sure.
You're saying, no, too expensive.
Yeah.
DVD
well, I think they shot quite a lot of it, and that suicide scene was from the Hulk's perspective anyway, so you didn't see, or Banner in the Hulk's perspective, so you didn't see anything effects-wise.
Plus, it's quite a sensitive subject anyway, so maybe they thought,
Well, they shot it.
Yeah. To appease the censors, and maybe just for budgetary reasons they decided to leave it out.
That's quite. Maybe censors got involved with it. You never know. You know what the.
Yeah,
possibly. I was thinking, why would have the censors have a problem? But then we're talking PG-13, aren't we? So I don't know.
This is it. Yeah, you've got to secure bums on seats. You can't really have anything higher than a 12 or an R rating.
They are quite strict. I forgot what they call it. The
MPAA.
MPAA, yeah.
They are like really can be really strict. Really annoying. But
to any American listeners, move over here. All our films have non-stop arcing ropes of jism.
Well, most of them.
All right. I might be overselling half the BBFC there. When he comes out of that sort of hole in the ground and just basically roars. That's the only other shot in the film where I think the Hulk looks all right.
Oh yeah, that's quite a good scene as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks quite good there. And
then you have two, computer-generated characters just fighting,
having a smackdown, and we're not convinced either of them can be like in any way fatally hurt. So
we see the Hulk smash, don't we?
Well, this is like a problem with Marvel generally, though, isn't it? Really.
What the third act action?
Yeah, it's just like the two characters who can't really be fatally hurt that much.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I gather that. But I didn't feel any peril here. You want to feel peril, even though if you thought about it for a moment, they'll be fine.
I felt more peril for any possible people who might be in the way.
Yeah.
You know, that's always a thing I always think of. I always think, but what about any innocent bystanders? But people are in that building, or whoever. I always think, oh my god, this would be awful. But the film's never really focused on any of that.
Not really, no. It's okay, but the problem is there were bits. I mean, particularly I noticed it again. I keep on about the CG, but when he was sort of sat effectively on top of the abomination, just smacking him with the halves of the taxi cab, and then that all sort of breaks up, and then he's just punching him repeatedly. They both look ridiculously shiny. It just looks unfinished. It doesn't look properly rendered. I just didn't like it. I kept getting taken out of it by how bad it looked. And when I knew he was coming back in the Avengers, I thought, oh, how bad's this going to look? And then, of course, they got ILM involved. And it was like, thankfully, this looks all right now. But, yeah, so all of this is just an action scene to finish off a film, isn't it?
Pretty much. There's not much to it.
There's a bit. They try and put a bit of quasi-danger in it because the helicopter comes down as well, and something gets thrown at it, and it comes down, and it sort of catches fire and all that shit.
That's pretty cool. The Hulk clap.
Putting it out with his clap. Yeah. And then what does he do? Effectively strangles the abomination till he kind of passes out, doesn't he? With a chain. That's it. He has a moment with Betty. I think he might say the word Betty as well. I'm not sure. Might be getting confused with the Ang Lee Hulk there. And then he's still on the run again. Very like the TV show, but with a budget. In the TV show, there is no budget, so Bruce Lee leaving town. Well, David in this TV show was just Bill Bixby walking down the street. Here, it's the Hulk like running off,
and he's in a more calmer climate. Not in a it's in a more rural setting, North America.
It goes to British Columbia in Canada, which is where I said he should have fucking gone to in the first place.
There you are, then.
Yeah. And he's just living out in some woodlands. You see him having a bit of a run. And he's got a letter from Betty, so they're still in contact. And I forget what it is she sent him.
He sends him the necklace that they sold off to get the short. So he finds it and then sends it back to her.
Okay. And then we see him on the floor in kind of a yoga pose.
Yeah.
Days without incident, and it's been, I think it was 11 when they were in New York. At this point, I think it's like 41 or something. So I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But there's a certain number of days. Could be any number, to be honest. I can't remember. And he opens his eyes, they're green, and it goes back to
smiles,
zero.
Which was a bit confusing.
You're supposed to imply he's got control of it now. He can Hulk out as he wants. And actually, when we get to the Avengers, if he's in control of the Hulk out, he's in control of the Hulk effectively. Whereas when he hulks out under stress at the start of that film, he is dangerous then.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where they were going with this.
I mean, they do explain. I say jump into Avengers. I think it probably depends on how he hulks out. If he
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Like if he gets out naturally out of control at rage, and then.
Which bothered me in Age of Ultron when like Black Widow kicks him off something, and you just think he should be fucking going mental. And then we cut straight to the post-credit scene is pre-credits here. It's Tony Stark going up to Ross in a bar and just telling him a team's being put together to deal with this problem. This has been retconned because originally this was meant to be Tony referring to the Hulk. It's been retconned that he's referring to the Abomination now. The reason being, one of the original thoughts on what the Avengers would do would be trying to take down an out-of-control Hulk. That was an idea before Whedon came on and wrote it. So that's what that sort of scene's about. But again, it's another tease that we might be getting a universe here.
Yeah, so, alright, so, because when I saw it originally, like back in the day, I assumed they were referring to the Hulk, or at least something relating to about the Hulk.
Yeah, they were.
But I didn't know there was actually that really out of control thing you made. Yeah,
it was. They still hadn't captured him at this point. He got away. Right. So he's going in, and I think the idea was it could be an out of control Hulk as the antagonist in the Avengers.
Yeah.
And now they've changed their mind. You can retcon that dialogue that he was talking about the Abomination or the Super Soldier Serum or whatever you need it to be. Really, you got a problem. You can help. So, yeah. And that's it, The Incredible Hulk.
Was it incredible?
Well, you tell us first, Becca.
Yes and no. The visuals are incredibly shocking in some parts. I was gonna say, yeah, I did enjoy this film up until about the halfway mark, and then it really started to slide away. My biggest problem was Liv Tyler in this film, and the graphics, but and also the portrayal of the military. I was like, what? But yeah, for me, not so incredible, unfortunately, but marginally better than Ang Lee effort a few years prior.
Would you have wanted to see a sequel? I mean, if they tidied up the CG, say this had done really well, and they do a few more rendering passes, would you have been interested to see where the character went next? In a solo film?
Possibly. I'm still surprised there hasn't been. Sorry, it's failing me now. I'm still surprised there hasn't been another Hulk movie. Obviously, we've seen Ruffalo more involved, in the Avengers films and everything, but I'm still surprised we haven't seen him in a standalone Hulk film.
Universal still have distribution rights. They don't own it. Marvel own the character, but Universal have distribution rights.
Which is interesting, given all the other characters and stories that have come out since. There still hasn't been another Hulk film, but I'm sure there's one in the pipeline probably.
My problem is I wouldn't know what you do with him though. I do struggle to think where you would go with.
I think pretty much they've done most of it. I don't know if they delve into the comics and.
You either have him as a character who's part of the world amongst others, or you do go the TV show route and have it like.
There's a She-Hulk character as well. Why haven't we seen her yet?
They do at some point. That's his cousin. He gives her like a blood transfusion or something, and she's permanently in the She-Hulk character.
I'm sure. Yeah, we'll see her. But
I don't know if that would work live action. But then I've thought that about a number of things, like a talking raccoon. And then it's ended up. So never write off.
He's the most iconic character,
Well,
especially now, this seems ripe for female superheroes. And female characters who are the front and centre, the main characters, main agency in their films. Surely not. The time is right for a She-Hulk film.
They've got hundreds of characters. That's the problem.
Exactly.
So they just don't have time to do everything. But yeah, what do you think, Chris? Anyway,
I pretty much the same as I thought. Really, I mean, I do enjoy it. I mean, I watched it twice, and it's a perfectly fine, easy watch. I think some of the action's actually pretty decent. It's just I just think it just lacks that depth and the reason to care, really. I mean, you could quite easily sort of be distracted from it and not really care too much. But you know what? Everyone's fine in the film, as you say. I mean, I think the cast is all rock solid and do an admirable job. And it ticks by. I just wish it had more meat on the bones. But to answer the question whether I would see an actual Hulk, like standalone Hulk movie, like with Edward Norton or Mark Ruffalo, why not? I'd be perfectly happy to see anything, really. I mean, I just would go in hoping that they had something to offer.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just green filters are a bad idea. Your main character can be green, that's absolutely fine. But green filters, we saw this with Star Trek Nemesis, they just make it look sickly. And they make everyone look a bit unwell. They used to use on the British version of The Office, the original version, the Gareth character, which is Dwight in the American, effectively. They used to put a green filter on every one of his talking heads sequences because they wanted him to look a bit sickly. And it does have that effect. It got on my tits in The Matrix. It got on my nerves in the last Next Generation film. And I don't like it here. It makes it quite an ugly film. And Ang Lee didn't do that. Ang Lee's film looked better, frankly. Looked better. It's a film that... I mean, Hulk wasn't the greatest film in the world, but it had some ambition. This really has none. It's too short as well. I'm really... I don't like overlong running times for the sake of it. But I also don't like over short running times for the sake of it. Spectre didn't need to be 2.5 hours, but fucking Quantum of Solace needed to be longer than an hour and 3/4. This film doesn't need to be 2.5 hours, but it needs another 20 minutes. It just does. Because we talked through the actual detail of the film in no time at all, really. There wasn't a lot there. As a little homage to the TV show in its way, I quite like that. I like Edward Norton in it. I like Mark Ruffalo as an actor more anyway, but I mean they're both perfectly valid takes and both perfectly good actors. So if it was Edward Norton in the Avengers now, I'd be fine with that. The look of this film is what I struggle with as much as anything else. I think the CG is horrendous. I think it was horrendous at the time. People who say, "Oh, it looks well, at least it looks better than that Ang Lee one," I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't. I'm not talking character design, by the way. If you're telling me like, you know, the size of the Ang Lee Hulk or the color they chose for the Hulk or the, you know, facial design or anything, that's a different argument. I'm talking about the quality of the work. This looks unfinished.
Do you think that generally that opinion tends to sort of echo the kind of like it's either all this or all that, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because you can make an argument for this Hulk because there's a lot more detail in it. There's
definitely.
You know, there's more musculature. You can sort of see tendons in places. You can sort of see, you can see sort of veins and all that. There was none of that in the Ang Lee Hulk because they just didn't have the ability, time, or, you know, processing power to put that much detail in it. I'm just literally talking that Hulk is stood in a physical space, and I believe that's a creature that's there, except the shorts, which do look awful. But this Hulk doesn't look there. It just looks like a cartoon. I think it's pretty awful, and they've just rushed through it, and it doesn't have those Marvel touches of an awful lot of humor either. And so I've been way too harsh on it actually because it's perfectly fine as like an update of the TV show, and I'd almost rather, if the Marvel Cinematic Universe hadn't happened, I'd rather this had like spun off into TV or something. You know, where you, like they did with Fame or something, where you recast some of the major characters, keep the ones that are willing to do it, and run it off that way. Because this take on the Hulk is much more suited to that episodic turn up somewhere, just like the TV show.
Yeah.
Overall, it's rather forgettable, and I didn't have a great time with it this time. And I've normally quite liked it, and I liked it when it came out. I think it's look and feel. I think it's just look and feel. Everything's bathed in this horrible green, and the CG's awful, and then rush through this rather perfunctory plot that you do as well, just covering in little bits. Like we see some of the outcome of what's going on in that park in Iron Man 2. We get a couple of drop lines from Ruffalo in the Avengers, and we see what the super soldier suit serum is in Captain America. So in some respects, you don't really need this film. That said, don't skip it. It's perfectly watchable. It's not a difficult watch. The first 20 minutes are the best of the film, actually, when you figure out who he is, where he is, and you actually root for the character hard enough that you don't want him to Hulk out when you've gone to see a film to watch the Hulk. That's actually pretty decent filmmaking. Thereafter, not so much.
So there we are. Though, to be honest, Dave, I feel a little bit uninformed.
Yeah, I do. I think that's probably because there's nothing happening in this film, so there's probably not much to know. But Becca can prove us wrong, I'm sure.
Well, I did try my best.
Well, that sounds promising.
Oh dear. At one point, I did kind of think, let's try and find some fun facts about all the various countries that he visited. But then I thought, no. So yeah, fun fact number one, as we mentioned earlier, Paul Soles plays Stanley the pizza shop owner, voiced Bruce Banner in the 1960s cartoon version of the Hulk.
I didn't know that. Awesome.
That's where Amazon Prime really comes into its own.
Yes, of course, you get all the facts.
So I thank you both. Yeah. That, and plus, my friend who's a Hulk fan was like, "Oh, you should add this, this, and this." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." So I just borrow your brain. So the Hulk isn't the only green thing about this film. It is also part of Toronto's Green Screen initiative to help reduce carbon emissions and to encourage film productions to stop being so messy, generally.
So basically, it's a carbon neutral deal. Yeah,
they try to make carbon neutral. Use obviously a lot of recycled goods, sustainably sourced.
Well, the Hulk did smash up
items.
a lot of cars. Those people probably had to get the bus after that.
Well, they did. This is it.
Did his bit for public transport.
Reusable batteries, yeah, public transport definitely. Hybrid cars we use, so a lot of the army and military vehicles, but were hybrids. And this is, going back 10 years ago now, so the technology is kind of just coming through. so it's not kind of quite where it is at the moment. So it was all kind of, fairly new. But yeah, it was all part of a plan to encourage film production units to not be so messy. Fun fact number 3, this is the only Marvel Phase 1 film not to have Nick Fury appear in person. I think you see his name right at the start, but we don't see him anywhere throughout the film. Fun fact number 4, as you mentioned, the Lonely Man theme from the 70s TV series can be heard various points throughout this film. And my 5th and final fun fact before I all melt in the heat, because it's quite warm in England at the moment. Apparently the Hulk was originally grey, but due to problems with the grey colouring in the comic, he became green, which I didn't know about. So that's quite interesting.
They couldn't get the grey to be consistent from panel to panel and page to page.
Right. Okay.
So that's what it was, and now they've kind of retconned that now. That like he started off grey the first few times he changed. You can get a comic book that I've read called Hulk Grey, and also there is a version of the character because the Hulk can sort of Hulk out into different ways. The Hulk we know is the kind of the savage Hulk, but there is a grey Hulk as well that's a little bit smaller, a little bit smarter, and not quite as strong. But yeah, the whole green was they saw the first few episodes and just said this isn't going to work.
I wonder, are they going to incorporate that into other films? Because obviously in the Civil War, not Civil War,
I think
the recent Avengers film, obviously now where he can't manifest, spoiler alert if you've not seen it, he really struggles to manifest Hulk. I wonder if it will suddenly sort of come out, there'll be this other Hulk.
I think he's heading to the sort of professor version of the character, which is there is a smarter version of him. But I'm not an expert, as will have been very obvious tonight with characters I don't wildly know.
You grew up with the series though.
But none of that was in the TV series. The TV series was a completely. I mean, bullets went through him in the TV series and stuff. He was a much more down-powered version of the character, so it was different. But yeah, the version we know is one take on the Hulk, but not the only take on the Hulk.
That's my fun facts about the not so incredible Hulk.
The average Hulk.
The average Hulk.
Yeah, I didn't find any of it that incredible, to be fair. But it's not a bad film. It is not a bad film. It's not.
We'll review
not
worse.
Edward Snowden.
We have reviewed worse.
I think we will review worse. I think we may even review worse in this series. It really depends on how you judge the films against what they're trying to achieve and what they're part of. Because certainly, having watched this tonight, I'm kind of looking forward to moving on to the next film, but that massively sort of shit the bed in trying to trail the Avengers and stuff. And so in some respects, this is a much more cohesive film. How I'll rank them at the end, I don't know yet, but it's not great.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where they kind of have to lay breadcrumbs. And I'm pretty sure
Yeah, they laid loaves of bread in that film. That was the problem.
It's assembling them all together. It's kind of.
But you learn as you go along. That's the thing.
This is it.
Yeah, this is the second movie. Next week's the third movie. It's still finding its way. I think by the time it gets to Avengers, it's fully confident about what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Phase 2 is of a consistently, generally higher standard as well. I don't even know if I mean higher standards in terms of ranking the films, but you can feel they figured out what they're doing. That's all I mean. But there you go, social media, folks.
Oh, you can find me at Cinematrix on Twitter. You can find this podcast or the older episodes at cinematrix.co.uk.
You can find me at PastyKid1976 on Twitter.
And you can follow us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. You can also find us on Facebook. Yeah, at last, we're finally back. Oh my God. After being underage for a little bit.
Although by the time you hear this, listeners, we've been back about 2 weeks, so I wouldn't go too. It's not new.
But I'm still quite excited. But yeah, at last we are back on Twitter, and you can also find us on
Not
Facebook.
Bruce Banner excited, I hope, but
no, we try not to get too excited. Still have some sexy times, but it's not that sexy. Facebook, type in Do Expect Us to Talk, you can find us on there. Also the same with YouTube. If you go up to the top and type in Do Expect Us to Talk, you can find all our videos on there, even though you won't actually see us. Stitcher. We're on Stitcher as well. iTunes. If you type in "Do Expect Us to Talk" on iTunes, and then please leave us a glowing review. Helps us to rank higher and attract more of the lovely listen type people. And should you wish, you can also drop us an email, expectustalk@gmail.com. But if you are a Nigerian prince wanting to offload millions and millions of pounds, no thank you. Send it to Dave.
I don't think Nigeria has royalty, so that's the.
No, but you always get some dodgy email saying, "Hello, I am Prince blah 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 blah."
I'd never get one from Prince.
Or from beyond the grave. I mean, you're from beyond the grave.
And there's Patreon for anyone who wants to throw us a dime.
Yes, we've now set up a Patreon account. Would you like to elaborate?
Not really, still not figured out what we're doing yet. But you can throw us some money if you want to. But there you are.
We do have one Patreon so far.
Oh, do we?
We do.
Yes.
Oh, yes, of course.
I won't say names because I don't want to shout anyone out who doesn't want to be shouted out, but I think I know who it is as well. And we've also got our first commission as well.
But as I say, we're still working out the details of our Patreon. Patreon. I'll say Patreon because I am. Tomato, potato. Yeah, we're still working out the details, but once we have them fully ironed out, we shall let you lovely listeners know.
Okay.
So to Bob, if you want.
Well, I think what we've done is quite timely there, because not only is it timely comics, which became Marvel, but also we've just gone completely off the point to promote something else, which is exactly what next week's film does, which means, Becca.
Do you expect us to talk will return with Iron Man 2?